Hello Magic players, this is Jumbo Commander and I have a new deck tech straight out of Unported. It's Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons is an awesome legendary human cleric for just black and a green. This 2/2 says, whenever Hapatra deals combat damage to a player, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. Alright. And whenever you put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create a 1/1 green snake creature token with Death Touch. Hapatra's gonna be great, cheap to come down, and impactful, and also is an army of snakes all put together. I'm thinking we've got a strategy already. I think that Hapatra has a lot of -1/-1 counter synergy built into her. I mean, -1/-1 counters are great. It's a theme in this new set. And to just start making snakes, that's just a bonus. I love it. And so with -1/-1 counters being thrown all over the place, you're gonna have some great creature control. I can see the strategy forming right now. Control the board of creatures, go wide with snakes, overwhelm your opponents. You know what else goes really well with -1/-1 counters are two mechanics, Wither and Infect. You could throw in a few Infect synergies in here. You know, Proliferate goes really well with -1/-1 counters too. I don't know. And also, guys, we're creating snakes. Oh, we could go snake tribal. We got to explore Hapatra and see what kind of options we have with this brand new and clearly awesome commander. Let's launch in and find out what -1/-1 synergies we're really dealing with here. One of the most powerful cards being released with Unported is Channeler Initiate. This card is going to be everywhere. It's going to be great in standard, and it's just magical in this deck too. Mana ramping that also interacts with -1/-1 counters in a really interesting way. You know, it kind of reminds me of Devoted Druid, which is also a really powerful way to ramp things out. Now just imagine you get your mana ramp and then you create snakes along the way. That's great. You need more mana ramp than just these two slightly overcosted dorks. So make sure to throw in some Birds of Paradise, maybe some Elves of Deep Shadow, and don't forget Plaguemur. Plaguemur is a mana ramp creature that happens to have Infect. Now, if you chump block with this guy, distribute a -1/-1 counter and get a snake, that's fine. But if you just happen to infect your opponent with your mana dork, that sounds pretty good too. Remember, we're also going wide with this deck. We're going to have lots of snakes on the battlefield, and so Cryptolith Rite could ramp us into those big spells we want to cast later. Whenever I play a deck that has a lot of mana dorks, it means I'm very susceptible to a board wipe, especially when my strategy also has me going wide with snakes. So I want to make sure to maintain my momentum by having lots of card draw. I want to mention Dusk Urchins because it's just cool synergy with -1/-1 counters, but don't skimp on the card draw. Throw in a Phyrexian Arena. In fact, I really suggest Lifecrafter's Bestiary, because this turns a stupid mana dork into card draw late in the game. And that scry is really valuable. I've been really impressed with this card, guys. Woodfall Primus is a powerhouse, and the persist mechanic is very nice. This is something to ramp into and really dominate the board. And we might be able to have some synergies because we can take -1/-1 counters away as well as distribute them. Wickerbow Elder is great at killing artifacts and enchantments because we can keep loading him up with -1/-1 counters and keep machine gunning our opponent's awesome toys to death. You know, as long as we're destroying our opponent's creatures, why don't we just steal them? Necroskitter is going to be an all-star in this deck, allowing you to steal your opponent's creatures right after you kill them. If there's a creature you particularly want in your opponent's graveyard, Puppeteer Clique can go in there and take it immediately, and that persist works really nicely. Now there's one other category I want to talk about. It's kind of like -1/-1 counter synergy, but it's like keyword big. And some of you are going to want to run these, and that's fine, but just know the direction that it's taking your deck. Deity of Scars, Noxious Hatchling, and Crocodile of the Crossing are just big creatures. There's not a lot of synergy going on with your deck. You can't easily move the counters around. You can't place them on other creatures, but they could generate you a big fatty and a bunch of snakes at the same time. So that's nothing to scoff at. The deck that I have built is a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical, and really goes wide before getting in damage. And so it doesn't really have a place for these cards. But if you want to have a more aggressive deck, have a critical mass of these fatties, I think they could treat you really well. Let's talk about how we're going to spread those -1/-1 counters all over the place. And one of the best ways to do it is Blowfly Infestation. Ugh. The art in this whole deck is just disgustingly awesome. Blowfly Infestation is an enchantment that says whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had a -1/-1 counter on it, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So all your creatures are going to be able to die with their counters on it and then spread it all around. And just imagine the whole time you're creating little delicious snakes that just want to attack. Grim Poppet can just sort of machine gun those -1/-1 counters exactly where we need them. Corrosive Mentor gives our black creatures Wither, which is a very powerful ability. We do have a lot of black creatures in this deck. The sad part is the snakes that Hapatra creates are not black. Ugh. If only they were black, it'd be so cool. I mean, they're already Death Touch. We can't ask for too much, but that would be really cool. I want to see how Corrosive Mentor works. I think the Wither mechanic is really strong, so I'm a little bit excited. Skin Render is just a classic way of distributing some -1/-1 counters. Let's take it up a notch with Midnight Banshee. This 5/5 Wither will spread -1/-1 counters to each non-black creature. Now that does include all of your snakes, but Hapatra is going to basically make you new snakes. So there are some weird synergies going on, but Midnight Banshee is going to wipe the table. Another board wipe, Black Sun's Zenith, could destroy everyone's board, but then leave you with tons and tons of little snakes. The snakes are so cute and wonderful. You got it. I need to get a bunch of those tokens and just have snakes all over the place. Okay, keep going. Incremental Blight can do a lot of damage. You put one -1/-1 counter on one creature, 2 on another, and 3 on a third. Now, sometimes you might have to target your own creature, but that's okay. We have a lot of synergies with -1/-1 counters. Just imagine if we put 3 on a Wickerbow Elder and just started popping off your opponent's enchantments. I mean, there is a lot of synergy going on, and I think that they can be really powerful together. Now, we are going to be wiping our board and their board a lot, and we're going to be investing a lot onto the table. So a card like Cauldron of Souls is going to be really nice because we can keep all of our creatures around, not our snakes, unfortunately, but a lot of our creatures can stay around, and we can produce a lot of new snakes with Cauldron of Souls. I like that because they'll all come back in at the same time. Hapatra will see all of those persist counters, and then we'll create a bunch of snakes. Cauldron of Souls is just great. You should pick up a copy because it was reprinted in the most recent Commander set, and it's a little bit cheap. So go get one because it's amazing. And board wipes is a weakness of this deck, so we're going to really invest in Cauldron of Souls. Mikaeus the Unhallowed. Just like I said, board wipes is a weakness of this deck. Mikaeus eliminates that weakness, allowing all of us to get Undying. And then with Undying, we can take those +1/+1 Undying counters off with all of these -1/-1 counters we have flying around, allowing our team to be very resilient. We just got to make sure to protect Mikaeus. Let's find a couple other ways to spread those counters around. Proliferate. Oh, the magic of Proliferate. Contagion Clasp is great. You throw a few -1/-1 counters around the battlefield, maybe a few more are out there, and then Proliferate has them all multiplying, shrinking your opponent's creatures all over the place. And what happens if your opponent has a Infect counter on them? Proliferate that too. What happens if there's a spare Planeswalker around? Proliferate everything. I love this. So we're going to go heavy on Proliferate. Contagion Engine. We're going to put a lot of -1/-1 counters and then Proliferate. Double Proliferate. We're going to be putting counters everywhere, spreading them all around, making snakes. I'm really excited. Why don't we just use those snakes to the best of our ability? Plague, Mob, Beast. Sacrifice one of those stupid little snakes, proliferate, and get so many more snakes. I'm also a fan of Grim Affliction. You just put a counter down and then proliferate, but that proliferate is so powerful, spreading like a disease all of these -1/-1 counters, generating snakes, infecting people to death. Let's spread some more counters. Archfiend of Ithneer. Now, we might not have enough cycling to trigger this guy and put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control. My mouth is gaping. It's so good. And the art is so creepy and awesome. I really want to throw some cycling in this deck to make sure that Archfiend has maybe a few cyclers. I don't know, but the cost of including him is so little because he cycles himself. I really like this demon. I think it's really cool. But I gotta say, there's one more demon that does a little bit of a better job spreading counters, and that's Carnifex Demon. 4 black for a 6/6 demon that has 2 -1/-1 counters on him. So sad. Oh wait, that's gonna trigger Hapatra as well. And then as we remove those counters, we just spread a counter to everywhere else. Again, this does kill all your snakes, but you're spreading so many counters around, you're just gonna generate more and more and more. I do worry about killing Hapatra every so often, but do you know what? This is the balance you need to strike in this deck. You know, you can't just spread all of your -1/-1 counters all over the place. You have to be judicious about when you use them and where you spend them, and whether you're killing your snakes or whether you're amassing even more. That's one reason why some popular -1/-1 counter cards have been left out of my deck, but I want to show them to you right now. Harbinger of Night. During your upkeep, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature. Yeah, that's great. It's exactly what you want to do, except there's no control. Harbinger of Night is just going to kill itself and kill a lot of other stuff on the board. And I won't have control over triggering this -1/-1 awesomeness over and over again. Let's look at Soul Snuffers. When Soul Snuffers comes into play, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature. This is a little bit better. I like this massive -1/-1 counter. It does kill a lot of your snakes, but I would consider running Soul Snuffers. But one card that I'm a little bit hesitant on as well is Crumbling Ashes. At the beginning of your upkeep, destroy target creature with a -1/-1 counter on it. Your opponent's creatures will have -1/-1 counters on them, but so will yours. If you effectively eliminate your opponent's creatures and you have Crumbling Ashes out, you're gonna have to start taking out your own creatures. And that's not okay with me. I think I have enough ammunition to take care of creatures. I mean, death-touching snakes all over the place, -1/-1 counters, board wipes. I might need to sort of explore other options to either end the game more quickly or control the game in other areas, but I feel like we got creatures really under control. Let's take a look at a few cards that don't deal with -1/-1 counters. Rayhan, Forgotten Ancient, and Verdurous Gearhulk. All of them can help distribute +1/+1 counters. This can get rid of Persist. This can get rid of a lot of those -1/-1 counters that could be harming us. I mean, imagine Hapatra. We don't want a lot of counters on Hapatra. As a 2/2, she's a little bit vulnerable, so we might want to figure out a way to take them off of Hapatra. And these +1/+1 counters, the ability to move them around, are going to be really good. There are a few other cards that do it. The Spikes can move +1/+1 counters, Spike Feeder, Spike Weaver. So you might want to look up those synergies. I just put these down mostly because I really like Forgotten Ancient. But I have to mention another card that's great at removing -1/-1 counters, Quill Spike. This little tiny beast, 2 and a Golgari, is just a little 1/1, but for a black or green for a Golgari, remove a -1/-1 counter from a creature you control, and Quill Spike gets +3/+3. If you're a little bit worried about overdoing the -1/-1 counters on yourself, Melira gets rid of those easily. They just can't have -1/-1 counters placed on them. I'm not going to include Melira because I kind of want -1/-1 counter synergies to happen. But if you're looking for some awesome persist shenanigans, Melira is a huge combo piece. You might be able to work something like that out. But I think I'm going to go more classic and just stick with like Quill Spike and Forgotten Ancient for getting rid of my -1/-1 counters I don't want. But we're going to have to end the game eventually. We can always attack with 1/1 snakes, but I think I want a little bit more swarming action. Nest of Scarabs does a really great imitation of Hapatra. Whenever you put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create that many 1/1 black insect creature tokens. Ooh, I love it. Not only would you get snakes, but insects too. Let's keep going. How about when we place -1/-1 counters, we get 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens too. This kind of triples up our token production. And so if we just drop, say, I don't know, an incremental blight. Oh, now Hapatra would look at incremental blight and say, oh, one creature gets a -1/-1 counter. Let's create a snake. Another one gets 2 counters. Let's create a snake. Another creature gets 3 counters. Let's create a snake. Creating 3 snakes total. But Flourishing Defenses doesn't see it that way. Flourishing Defenses says, oh, a total of 6 -1/-1 counters were distributed. Bam, I will create 6 elves. If you can imagine, like, that will get out of control, especially with all of these contagion engines and demons that spread -1/-1 counters all over the place. We're gonna have an army in no time. Let's keep going wide with a card like Creekwood Liege, getting us a little worm every single turn and pumping up a lot of our other creatures. But do you know what works even better is Michaeloth. I know Michaeloth deals with +1/+1 counters, but it can easily devour useless snakes and then pump out sapperlings. And all of those proliferate shenanigans work with +1/+1 counters too. Pump Michaeloth up to be really big, produce a ton of sapperlings, and then we'll just march over for the win. If we're marching over, we could use From Beyond and Decimator of Provinces to really trample over our opponents. Now, we could always rely on Craterhoof Behemoth or some other cards to sort of go over the top. Make sure you have a way to close out this game because it can be really difficult to go the distance with just a bunch of 1/1 snakes. You can, it's just hard. Beastmaster's Ascension is another way to close out the game. Make those 1/1s 6/6s. That works really well. And finally, we have one of the better ways to close out a game, Triumph of the Hordes. Give your creatures +1/+1, trample, and infect. Just imagine all the -1/-1 counters. They will spread around as your opponents desperately try to block and survive. If they can. Triumph of the Hordes leads us into a very sensitive topic. The topic of Infect. Do we want to run Infect in this deck? Now, I think there are a few cards that work really well with the Infect synergy. All of the Proliferate, the -1/-1 counter distribution, it really does kind of belong in this deck. Maybe not a devoted Infect deck, but maybe just a taste of Infect. Maybe an alternate win condition. Some of my favorite Infect cards are cards like Tainted Strike. My particular favorite is casting it on an opponent's creature that's attacking someone else in a multiplayer game. Grafted Exoskeleton is also a really low cost inclusion, along with another favorite, Caress of Phyrexia. I really like this card because target player draws 3 cards, loses 3 life, and gains 3 poison counters. So, I'm fine paying 4 mana to draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. And by the way, unless I'm playing against someone else doing Infect, I don't care if I have 3 poison counters. So this is card draw. I like that. But this is also card draw that you can point at your opponent and get the ball rolling with Infect. Make them draw 3 cards and then give them 3 poison and then start proliferating that. Make them scared. Icarats also starts the ball rolling, giving everyone a poison counter. And Inkmoth Nexus has a really low floor. It's just a land. Sometimes all you need is one poison to be able to take over the game. But if you want to go deeper into Infect, consider Core Prowler, which can proliferate. Hand of the Praetors, which pumps all your other Infect guys and gives poison counters when these guys enter the battlefield. Phyrexian Hydra is just great in this deck because he's a very threatening 7/7 for 5. And because they have Infect, they'll distribute damage as -1/-1 counters, but also Phyrexian Hydra will get -1/-1 counters itself as it takes damage. Skithiryx, Little Skittles. This dragon is super dangerous, allowing you to have haste, give it regeneration. It's just really powerful. Phyrexian Crusader can also close out a game. First strike with Infect is nasty because you need a creature that's so much bigger to be able to take out Phyrexian Crusader. Not to mention protection from red and white. Sometimes this just hoses other decks. Phyrexian Swarmlord really fits in with this deck. It's a 4/4 Infect, but at the beginning of your upkeep, you get a 1/1 green insect creature token with Infect for each poison counter your opponents have. So if you've just spread some poison counters around, you're not really going for an Infect kill that quickly, you could start getting a bunch of little insects that will become very dangerous later on in the game, and we want to go wide. Or we can cash in those insects and those snakes to Flesh Eater Imp. This evasive 2/2 flyer can have you sacrifice a creature to pump him up +1/+1. Let's sacrifice some snakes and get in for crazy damage. Infect might seem a little bit mean, and I don't think it is. I think it's totally fair, and you don't have to go super heavy Infect. You can just have a taste of Infect in this deck, and I think it would taste really good. Another strategy, you could go Snake Tribal. Ooh, let's find out if we can go full-on snakes in this deck and if it will work. Well, there is one sad part. No blue. Kasado Orochi Archmage is just a great snake lord. I love the ability to get snakes through. Broodbirth Viper is a really cool snake that lets you draw, and Lorescale Quaddle will let you cash in those draws for more +1/+1 counters. Mystic Snake is cool, but these cards can't even go in this deck. I'm kind of waiting for a Sultai Snake. I don't know if I should be waiting that long, but trust me, most of the snakes are in green and most of the snakes are great. So I'm pretty sure you can make a really kick-ass snake deck. Let's look at some of the all-star snakes that could go in this deck. Sashiro the Anointed is really powerful because it pumps your snakes and lets you draw cards. Orin Viper also lets you draw cards, and Skullwinder lets you draw a card from your graveyard. I'm a big fan of Skullwinder, by the way, and I think you should be too. The politics of letting your opponent get a card is really, really valuable. Hooded Hydra is great for going wide. It might be a really good inclusion in this deck anyways. Sosuk, Son of Sashiro, pumps your snakes. And Sabertooth Cobra is very cool because he gives a poison counter and then it like tax your opponent unless they get another one. I really like the old school snake and poison counters. Snakes are also pretty good at ramping. Lotus Cobra is the classic awesome ramper, but don't forget Orochi Sustainer, Sakura Tribe Elder, or even Sakura Tribe Scout. So there are some snake players that could really make a snake tribal deck work. That has been Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. I think that this is going to be a really fun, powerful deck. I can see it going Infect really easily. I can see it going Snake Tribal really easily. The version that I've chosen is a little bit of a more controlling -1/-1 counter distribution deck that goes wide and then goes over the top with some finishers. And it has a little taste of Infect in it. Now I like that because it's pretty well rounded. It lets people see what options they have. But man, I also wouldn't be down if you decided to go big, get some Crocodiles of the Crossings in there, and really get aggressive. Well, that just goes to show you how great of a card this is, that we can have so many distinct strategies for just one commander. I'm super impressed. This has been Jumbo Commander with another Commander Deck Tech. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more every Wednesday, almost, I missed last Wednesday, sorry guys. Please subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. I love all my subscribers, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later, bye.